Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the second half of our conference. And I hope everyone enjoyed the day thus far. I hope that you guys were able to check out the networking tab and connect. I had a couple of people reach out directly to me, so it's always really, really great and special that we can connect. And that is like really what this is all about: is helping each other solve those problems. Professionals connecting with community members and the like. So I'm glad that that went well. And our next speaker is super dynamic, and she is going to be. I'm gonna give her due and make sure I run through her credentials and everything. But before we do that, we have to get a word in from our beautiful sponsors. And so I'm gonna ask my producer to go ahead and roll those videos.
When it comes to the safety and protection of our children, education is prevention, so get SCARS certified. But don't stop there. Intervene if you see someone making a child feel uncomfortable or fearful. Abusers like to exert power and fear over children. Be their voice. Keep communication open. No topic is off limits. But don't stop there. Your response to a disclosure could make or break a child's ability to heal and to thrive. Don't avoid, don't deny, don't minimize, don't blame, and don't shame. Visit scarsbermuda.com to learn more.
Okay, and again, welcome back. Thank you so much to our sponsors, the Ministry of Health. We have SCARS, and of course, Barrett's and Sons, which has been a staple in this community as long as I've lived. They've been here. So welcome back, and thank you to them. So again, I hope you've had a chance to stretch, snack, and even briefly ignore some of your email inboxes. This next session is going to hit home for a lot of us, especially if you're navigating parenting, careers, mental health all at once. I know I am a parent, I have a career, and I am navigating the mental health space. So this is going to be really powerful. So she's smart, she's insightful, she's one of the best in the field. Dr. Alicia Hancock is a registered Bermuda psychologist. She specializes in helping parents navigate the challenges of raising resilient children while managing their own mental health. In her session, Meeting the Challenges of Parenting While Coping with Mental Health, she shares practical tools for discipline without shame and building emotional strength within families. Dr. Hancock is known for her compassion and grounded approach to mental wellness in the home. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Alicia Hancock to the stage.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's wonderful to see everybody here. Thank you for taking the time to invest in your role as a parent. Parenting is a journey. It's filled with incredible joys and meaningful milestones, but it's also layered with challenges that often leave parents feeling and wondering, am I doing this right? Or why is this so hard? Parenting is one of the most important responsibilities that you'll ever take on, and yet it's so often one of the most complex. Parents deal with competing demands, shifting expectations, children at different developmental stages, and just different personalities of children, between also dealing with things like technology, school issues, behavioral issues, and also what's very crucial, which is your own well-being, which often, unfortunately, gets pushed to the side and sacrificed. So when we imagine parents, we often think of the big, perfect moments, the embrace, the proud achievements, the milestones. But underneath those moments lies the everyday work, the undone laundry, the sibling rivalry, the getting the kids here and there. You've got one or more children that need to be in, different places at the same time. And then the frustration comes when, the plans go off course. So it doesn't come with a map. Parenting does not come with a map. There's no cookbook recipe in how to raise a child. And even you have 2 or 3 different children that have completely different needs and completely different personalities. So it gets very complex. But yet we feel the weight of the expectations from yourself, from other people, from society, and even from your own children. The result, many feel lost, overstretched, second guessing, doubting, or simply just feeling exhausted. So if the words overwhelmed, confused, exhausted are frequent use in your vocabulary, you're not alone. Most parents feel that way. So what I'm going to talk about today is just the reality of parenting. It's what, what are the key moments? And unfortunately, because I only have a short period of time, I'm just going to target a few things that I think are very key and crucial into hopefully helping you gain some insight and hopefully help you navigate your role as a parent to make you feel more confident that you're doing it right. Okay. So, the reality is kids don't need perfect parents. They need authentic ones who keep showing up. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. And I know we've all heard this, but there really isn't. But the problem is even though we've heard it, it doesn't mean that parents strive to be the perfect parent, or they become disenchantized when they don't get it right, or something goes wrong with their child, or something didn't go as planned. So parenting can be both joyful but also exhausting. And like I said earlier, there's no manual, there's no cookbook. It requires trial and error because you're meeting this child for the first time, right? They have their own set of DNA. They have similar DNA to you, but it's very different. So, you're meeting this little person for the first time and just trying to figure out, okay, how do I raise them? You're constantly learning new things about them as they develop into their person. And in the meantime, you're implementing strategies to try to raise them into a decent human being that you can be proud of. So the idea is to target progress, not perfection. And I want you all to hear that: progress, not perfection. Okay. If you're a present parent, then that is exactly where you want to be. Being present and being accessible and being consistent is key. You're going to get it wrong. And you actually getting it wrong is actually a key part of what I'm going to talk about, because if children see that you make mistakes, then guess what? They're going to realize that making a mistake is not a big deal. It's not a big deal. And that they can recover from that. And the shorter span of time that you recover from your own mistakes is as quick as the child will learn that they can recover from their mistakes. So let's release the pressure of perfection and embrace the word presence in your child's life. So there's the myth of balance. And I'm going to use the word balance because it seems to be quite a cliche word these days. Oh, you just got to get a better balance of your life. Oh, just, balance just seems to be this word, this catchphrase that is used quite a bit. And the reality is there is no balance, right? When people say, you should be more balanced, I think the idea is that you want to maybe shift around some of the things that you're prioritizing so that there's more alignment, right? And so the idea of balance it's a myth. So parenting, it's not about equal parts. It's about staying aligned with what matters the most. Okay. It's a constant adjustment, so you're constantly having to adjust the bar, adjust what's a priority, because things are always changing when you're a parent. What you planned on doing with your child at once in one part ends up changing the next because something's happened. And how you cope with that and how you recover from that is going to be key in how you approach your parenting behavior. You know, what matters the most right now in just about the entire relationship with your child is your connection with them. And connection starts at a very early age, very early age. If you want respect, if you want compliance, if you want just a nice kid, focus on your connection with them, because your connection with them is a pivotal point in how their connections with other people will occur and will develop. You know, it starts at an early age. Even talking to your children starts at a very, very early age, you know, and having your kids feel comfortable enough and safe enough to come and talk to you is probably one of the biggest stresses that I can emphasize in parenting, because if you have a child that feels safe enough and emotionally safe enough to come and talk to you about anything without opinion, without too much of commenting, you embrace their thoughts and their ideas, even if you have a different opinion. It's important that you validate their experience. It's important that you validate their thoughts, without trying to sway them into thinking about how you think about the situation. And one of the reasons why is you're talking to a little person. This little person has no experience yet in the world. We're talking from a place as an adult, we're talking from a place of a lot of experience. And so the child's not going to get it anyway, right? And the sooner that you allow your child to have a voice, not control of the situation, but have a voice, is the minute that the child feels safe enough to come to you and talk to you about what they're thinking and feeling. And what comes with that also is your own ability to cope with your child's feelings. Because if your child feels that their feelings are dismissed, or you go straight to trying to fix the problem without addressing the emotion behind it, then you're essentially, not intentionally, but you're essentially shutting down that child's ability to feel. And we don't want to do that. Because if we do that, then we teach the child to internalize their feelings and not express them. And like I said before, expressing your feelings about something doesn't mean that they're correct on how the experience or what should happen next, but it allows them to feel something so that they can embrace the idea of what to do next, right? So by expressing your feelings, you're helping to create a more rational person than a person that's going to internalize their feelings to create more of an irrational thinking process. And I'll go into a little bit more detail later about that, because that's quite a complex issue. So the idea is, what matters the most is your connection with your child. And now that brings me into what I emphasize quite a bit, which is the expectations you have of yourself as a parent. And fortunately and unfortunately, what many times plays into that is what you believe other people expect of you. Because sometimes it feels like parents are looking for a cookbook. They're looking for, okay, well, what should I be doing? Right. And the idea is, your experience of yourself as a parent with your children and your family is going to be different from other people because of so many different variables. It's the size of your family. It's how much support you have. It's your socioeconomic status. It's your what your culture, where you come from, where your family. There's so many variables that play into who you become as a parent. And so, kind of basing your expectations on general guidelines of how to create kids that model the values that you would want to see in them as adults. But the idea is, you as a parent have to do a lot of self-reflection within yourself. And the reason is because a lot of what goes into how you parent is the things are situations like what your own conditioned beliefs are that are cemented from your own childhood. And a lot of times we don't realize what our own issues are until we become a parent, right? We don't realize what triggers us or the things that we're sensitive to. An example would be, I use this a lot in my sessions, which is, the idea that a lot of people have the core issue of not feeling good enough. And if that's something that resonates with you a lot and it causes a reaction that may not be warranted for the situation, you're going to find yourself having difficulty with communicating, difficulty with having your child open up. And so the more self-reflective you are as a parent, the better. Like I said, so avoid the comparison trap, the comparing yourself to other families. Well, what are they doing? Well, how does and so there are some similarities in terms of what you can try, but don't expect it to work all the time, or don't expect it to work for your particular situation with your child. An emotion that I also talk a lot about with parents is guilt. I'm going to share something funny because I really truly believe that particularly moms, as soon as moms get pregnant with a child, that guilt complex just immediately, it emerges, and it's there for life, and a lot of decisions become based on guilt, right? When we charge our decisions based on guilt, we end up, doing ourselves a disservice. Because then you end up, many times what I see is when guilt plays the primary role in making decisions or facilitating reactions, unfortunately you end up sacrificing your needs or saying yes all the time, or not setting limits or boundaries. And obviously, as we know, that can get you in a lot of trouble when it comes to your child's behavior after that. So let go of the guilt and the shoulds, right? And again, that requires a lot of self-reflection. Model self-compassion, right? One of the things that, we know with children is they're always looking, they're always observing, and they're always evaluating. They may be little people with little experience, but they're creating their own interpretation of your behavior and how they see you treat people, how they see you talk about things happening in the world. And so when you think about how you navigate your own life, are you modeling the same behavior, the same compassion towards other people that you want your child to exhibit? Because that's not something that's always innate in children. Sometimes, we have to actually sometimes teach them how to think about other people, how to come outside of themselves, out of that egocentric side, to think about other people. And that is developed over time. And imagine if we modeled it to children on a regular basis, that they would reach that milestone a lot quicker. So, and it's not complicated things. It's things like opening the door for somebody, asking people how they're doing. I often, when I'm at the cash register in the supermarket, I'll ask the person, the cashier, I'll say, well, how's your day going? And sometimes it'll result in a little bit of a conversation or a little bit of a giggle. And other times, it's, they answer the question and then it's done. But, I think it's a very powerful move if you can do the little things of what in front of your child, what it's going to help them become. And so one of the things that I encourage to do is to actually do a kind of weekly reflection. When you navigated this issue with your child, what worked, what didn't work? What can you let go of? Now, the other aspect, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on expectations because I think it's very, very important. I want all of you to really think about what are the expectations I have of myself? Because most of it's subconscious. We just react. We just do things out of habit, right? Out of conditioning. And if you really think about where your expectations come from, you might be able to determine, well, that doesn't fit in my life right now as a parent. It doesn't fit in my life right now as a wife and as a family member. I was conditioned to do that because of A, B, C, and D as a child. And so, and a lot of times, again, if we have parents that have grown up with very high expectations of themselves that still occur to this day. And many parents might say, oh, well, that's what drove me to be successful. Yeah, but how much anxiety are you experiencing every day? It's too much. And as a parent, right, as a child, you can navigate going to school, doing extracurriculars, coming home, where you have the ability to have some mental freedom. But as a parent, you may have a career, you may be a spouse, you may have to take care of your parents, you may be on the board of certain organizations, and you're a parent of 2 or 3 children. So you can't, it's impossible to meet the expectations that you may have had for yourself as a child to try to meet them now. And so why I emphasize that is to basically have some self-compassion, right? Compassion for yourself. Because if you don't let go of your own expectations that may or may not be too high, you could end up incredibly stressed. And then guess what that stress does to your ability to parent? It changes how you navigate approaching parental issues. It changes how you navigate, yourself at work. And then, if you're not meeting your own expectations, which may be too high, then you may sink into a bit of a depression. You may become a bit more absent. So one of the things that I emphasize a lot, not just to parents, but to everybody, is that, life is about constantly modifying and assessing your expectations for yourself. That is a key thing that if there's anything I want you to take away, because that kind of is at the groundwork of all some of these other things that are layered on top of it. Constantly assess, reflect, and modify your expectations as needed. Meet yourself where you're at, because we can't have it all together all the time, even if you want to portray that to the world. And you also want your children to be able to realize that, it's okay. Like, it's okay for parents to have a moment where they're anxious, where they're stressed. But how you recover from that is the key part. How you model your own emotional expression is very key as well. So it's not just bypassing it. So if a child comes to you and says, hey, I felt, that so-and-so did this to me, and you may know reality of what to do, how to fix that. But I really caution you to take a step back and just talk to them about how they're feeling and why they're feeling this way. What is the key factor? What is their core issue behind that incident? Because if you deal with the core issue, then you're going to be able to navigate. Your child's going to be able to navigate through multiple different scenarios because you've dealt with the core issue, which might be not feeling good enough, not feeling important enough, not feeling included, and so forth. So some of the key points that I wanted to bring up because of the time limit today is certain key factors that I really think are important to instill in children. Accountability. We hear that word all the time, right? And I know I constantly talk about it, not just for children, but for adults too. Accountability, it builds character, So when we set boundaries with our children, we are creating a space for them not just to feel safe, but to learn how to navigate their own life in terms of what's okay and what's not okay. If you have to, providing kids with consequences builds responsibility and character. Consequences are important. If we don't give children consequences as a child, to them as children, guess what's going to happen as adults? They're going to fall apart the minute that they get in trouble. They're likely to exacerbate or, again, push the limits when that that may cross a line and get them into bigger trouble, like legal trouble. And so providing the limits for your children as a child then paves the way for them to learn how to be responsible people, how to consider other people, right? You don't want to get caught up in the idea of, oh, well, they're just children. Well, children learn. They're still learning, yes, because they haven't had enough experience yet. But they also need to learn that that particular behavior is not acceptable. And I swear by this phrase, which is many times kids need to feel to get it, right? They've got to feel the impact in order to learn and understand what's okay and what's not okay. And children, they're supposed to make mistakes, and their mistakes are not necessarily a reflection on you being a bad parent. They're making mistakes because they don't have the experience yet to know, and they rely on us to tell them through consequences of what's okay and what's not okay. Will they like it? Absolutely not. But they will also develop respect for you, right? They'll develop respect for you if you hold them accountable. They will become kids that are more considerate of other people, which is incredibly important, okay? Kids learn how to be responsible when we don't consistently rescue them, and I get it. We don't want our kids to have to cope with any negative emotion. We don't want kids to have to deal with any discomfort or anything that's going to make them feel sad or worried or upset. But that's not the real world. And if you don't allow them to experience that now, when they have the coveted umbrella of support, and you wait until they're an adult, or you wait until you send them off to college or university, they're going to crumble, right? Many times they crumble and fall apart because they don't know, they've never had the experience of recognizing that they can recover from their mistakes. They can recover from consequences, that it doesn't follow them. But when they become, what I call emerging adulthood, from the age of 18 to 26, between 18 and 26, when the brain develops fully by 25, 26. That's like an emerging adulthood. They're not adults yet, although legally, they are considered adults, but they're not adults yet. They're just starting to experience the world. But if you wait until then for them to experience consequences on their own, many times they fall apart. Many times they have to come home. Many times they don't know how to navigate life on their own. So accountability starts with you as the parent, guiding them through making choices, informing them of what is expected of them, being consistent as much as possible. It's impossible to be regimented and consistent all the time because life happens. But if you're generally consistent to the point where the child knows exactly what to expect, then there's less anxiety and there's less of a tantrum. Your tone of voice is key. If you don't care to pay attention to how your tone of voice is based on your own emotion, right? So that's that other self-reflective piece, is make sure that your tone of voice is very even, because I'll tell you what, kids know when they've got you. They know when something upsets you more than it does them. And guess what that gives them? Leverage, right? It gives them leverage. And so if you practice on how to have an even tone as much as possible, and you keep the idea and you keep the attention on them, then you're going to have a much better outcome. You're going to have a much better outcome, because the idea is if you're consistent and you follow through, you've won, right? And although this isn't a winning-losing competition, you've won, meaning you have done your job, regardless of their reaction. providing a safe and nurturing environment with boundaries is the key here. Okay. A safe environment means the child can come and talk to you about anything, even if it's terrible, even if it's bad. We'll deal with this together. It doesn't mean they won't get consequences. It just means we'll deal with this together. Let's dig deep to figure out why this happened. Let's figure out with the child why they were feeling this way, why they reacted in this way. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to get a consequence. Empathy and consideration are probably two values that I think are very important to try and implement in parenting. Children copy what we do more than what we say. So if you lead with empathy and respect in your life in front of them, then they will likely do the same. Model kindness in front of them. Model gratitude. State it out loud. State to your family members, state to, people around you how much you're grateful for their time and effort. That you're grateful for your child for being who they are. So you might say, I'm so grateful that you come right you come right home and you get your chores done. I'm really proud of you for doing that. Taking the time to just say all of those things, like basically modeling for the children how much, their kindness, whenever they're kind towards you or to other people, you want to reinforce it. Encourage perspective taking, right? So sometimes if your child's coming to you with an issue and you think, okay, well, maybe you're only getting one side of the story, and encourage them to think, well, how do you think that so-and-so was feeling when that happened? I know you're saying that it's this, but well, is it possible that this could have happened to, or that it could be because of this? And so you're encouraging them to not get kind of hyper-focused and rigid in how, their perspective. It encourages them to open the door and to be more flexible in their thinking. And as I said before, praising their efforts to help others. So when you see your child helping somebody, or even thinking about or expressing empathy towards somebody that they may not even know, maybe somebody on the street, reinforce that. Tell them how proud you are of the fact that they're so thoughtful. Because all of those things, when you say, I'm proud of you, when I'm happy that children soak that in and they want to do more of it. Why? Because it pleases you. It pleases you. And, and that's again, a key factor in when raising children is that, they're watching you. They're looking for your approval. So developing leadership and resilience, letting kids fail, and even dealing with our own failure. Failure, isn't the end. It's only the end. It's only actual failure if you give up, because failure leads to building. They're building blocks. So as the quote says, failure is a teacher, supporting your child through mistakes instead of shielding them from every fall. So, give your kids meaningful responsibilities, have them, don't jump in to do things, even though it's easier. I get it. At times when you're not in a rush, give them the responsibilities, let them do it. Let them do it. Let them lead some small decisions, right? To build their confidence that they can make decisions. And one kind of tactic that I use quite a bit is say, well, even if you're trying to give them the choice to make some decisions and they may be quite anxious or resistant to do that, give them 3 choices, but still don't jump in and tell them. what to do. Don't tell them what decision to make if it's something that you can let them make, where it could be like extracurricular activities, or dinner options. The other thing, you also want to normalize failure, right? Kids are supposed to fail. That's how they learn. But if we jump in and rescue them from feeling the failure, then we're not teaching them anything. We're teaching them to be afraid of failure, which means they may develop a very perfectionist mindset. I can't make mistakes. And you see, it just has a domino effect. So we want to normalize that failure is normal, but if you don't give up, that's the most important thing. So basically, we want to kind of create the stepping stone for them to be able to accept that they're going to make mistakes and that they can recover from it as long as they don't give up. So, letting your children fail safely. So, for instance, it's obviously, it's not the opposite of success, right? That it's not that absolute. Protecting them from consequences often backfires. Like I said earlier, it just teaches them to be afraid of failing, to be afraid to make mistakes. And what we want to do is celebrate the effort towards the goal, not perfection. Teaching them that basically life is not just this straight trajectory. The plan is up here. And yes, it's important to have a plan, and the goal's up here, and it's important to have a plan. But almost always, 99% of the time, it doesn't go according to that straight line. It's here. It goes over here, and it diverts, right? And it has to be constantly modified, right? And that's even for your own well-being as a parent. You're going to constantly have to modify. As long as they don't give up on the goal, you want to teach them that, sometimes we have to, redirect to get there. So consistency. Consistency creates safety, right? Predictability helps kids feel secure when they know what's going to happen. Following through with what you said you're going to do. Don't, one of the biggest traps you can get into is when you react in the moment and you make a threat of something that you're going to take away or do, and you don't follow through, then the child learns that, oh, well, I can probably push that limit because, mom threatened me this, or dad threatened me this last time and it didn't happen. So the lack of follow through will cause a lack of respect and a continuance of pushing the limits. And, when kids know what to expect, when they know what the consequences are typically going to be, you build their trust, you build a sense of control and a sense of calm in your children. And that's really, really important. Really important. It's impossible to be perfect every time, but as consistent as possible where your child generally knows what's going to happen next. They pretty much know, how mom or dad's going to react to this. Earning. I'll touch on this quite quickly, but one of the most crucial pieces I think we've gotten away from is having kids earn things. The value of earning. Most things in life have been earned, as opposed to been given. Things that were freely given can feel hollow, while things that we've earned can enhance our sense of meaning and purpose. So be careful, don't just give out things to your children. Have them earn it. It gives them a sense of purpose and accountability, and, allows them to feel good about themselves. You'd be surprised at how often it actually increases their confidence in who they are. They feel proud of the fact that they earned this. They also value it more when they have earned it themselves. Communication is one of the key things I talk about a lot, and I wish I had more time to talk. I could do a whole session on communication. But, developing confidence in children really starts with how we communicate with children. So trying to avoid telling them what to do, help them develop options of how to resolve something. Don't just jump in and rescue them and tell them how to do it. Create a safe space for your children to communicate. Your tone, your body language, and what you say is very, very key in having children come to you. And model how to communicate, how you treat others in various different environments, expressing empathy and gratitude towards others, because our example is their foundation. And creating a safe space for your children to come to you means letting them talk, giving them, the ability to express exactly how they're feeling without jumping in to tell them that they're wrong, so to speak. Okay. Some practical tools include family non-negotiables. Okay. So you might have 3 priorities that you are sharing with your children in terms of what values do you have as a family that, without saying they're going to happen. Do a weekly reflection time. So for yourself, you can do it as a family, but you can also do it as a couple or even for yourself. Go back through the week and say, okay, what went well? How can I improve in any area of my ability to parent? The fail forward family night. And that kind of gives, again, a platform for people to be able to talk, right? This is the ability for people in the family to create a space to talk about anything and everything, where you guys talk about everything. Okay. You talk about how kids are feeling, how their week was, what things they'd like to see different, having shared chores and gratitude moments, sharing areas where you feel gratitude, where you're grateful. Develop traditions. I always find that, what do we remember most as adults? We remember traditions as families. And guess what? We have an emotional connection to that tradition. And that's how we feel the warm sensation of feeling close to our family. So when you develop new traditions in your family that are created by everybody has a say, that actually can create more connection with your child. So the idea actually in all is like, parenting is not about perfection. It's about being consistent. It's about preparation, raising kids ready for life. It's about progress, presence, and unconditional love that matter the most. I want to leave you with a few reflections, and my email is below. Okay. What expectations as a parent might be unrealistic that you have as a parent? Which ones can you release? What are 3 values or priorities that can guide your family? List 3 traits that you want your child to develop into adulthood. How can you, or are you modeling them intentionally? Okay. And, again, this is all about development. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. And the minute that you embrace that you make mistakes, is the minute that, you can let go and move past it, and it won't negatively impact your ability to communicate and parent your child. Reflect on one boundary or rule that needs more consistency in your life as a parent. How will you reinforce it this week, for instance? I realize we've run out of time, and I really, I'm sorry that I wish I had more time. But I welcome questions. I welcome, if you guys want to ask me questions, you can email me anytime. And I will be readily available.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hancock. That was brilliant. I was sitting here listening and taking notes. I have, as a mom of a 21-year-old and a 17-year-old, I have always wondered if I'm doing it right. I've dealt with the mommy guilt. I've dealt with, some of those things as well. So I'm just like, I did that right, or oh, I could have done better in that area.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. But there was actually a question. I'm going to just read it out loud. And I know that we need to get to the breakout session. So so before I read this question, and if you pose this question in the chat, feel free to stick around. And we do have the next speakers, and I want to introduce them first, but I want to give you some more time with this one question because it did come in. Somebody said, what happens when you have done all you can, all the things, and they turn 18 and now they don't want to listen to anything and they don't communicate and they aren't interested in communicating at all. So now they're 18, you know how they think they're grown and they moved on, but now they just don't want to listen. So someone, if you can briefly respond to that person. And again, I appreciate you putting your email up. So for those that are still watching this presentation, you can connect directly as well.
Okay. Yeah. And as I said, it's a obviously short period of time. And I would love to get into, different developmental milestones and how to approach different situations. But for this one in particular, this is a very, very a good question, because between the ages of 18 and 25, as I said in the presentation, that's what I would call emerging adulthood. It's not adulthood yet because they haven't had enough experience outside of having parents around to nurture, to guide, etc. And so at 18, they may be on their own. And believe that they're an adult and they can navigate the world by themselves. And to some extent, unfortunately, you have to let them, right? What I would say to that is, don't believe that your guidance and your words of wisdom to your child is going unnoticed or not being absorbed. Just because they may not be following it, it doesn't mean that it's not in there. And most times what ends up happening is kids will always come back to when they're ready or when a situation has occurred, when they've learned enough, so they've reached that threshold of they didn't feel enough to listen to you until they did feel a consequence and they did feel something that did have an impact on them. And then they get it.
Right.
So a lot of it is being patient, and if they don't communicate at all, be patient. I would suggest that you don't stop trying to communicate, but I would be careful of that you don't communicate in such a way where you're saying, why haven't you reached out to me? You need to reach out to me. You need to talk to me. Why aren't you talking to me? You don't want to interrogate them.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Sorry. No, thank you so much, because again, I think all parents around the world need that level of insight. So this has been insightful for me, and I'm sure everyone else. So thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Hancock. And we are going to get everybody moving to the next sessions here. You guys, if you enjoyed that, leave a little hand clap in the chat room over there. Now, listen, we are heading back out to our breakout sessions. You may already be over there. On stage A, we've got Vakita Basin, who is going to be giving us a talk on mental health equality through cultural understanding. And on stage B, we have Jacob Jonum, who will take us on a whole kind of journey through the policy world and why it's important to update our Mental Health Act. So pick your session and let's keep the momentum going, and we will see you guys back here after those breakout sessions. Take care.